Hey folks, it's another Broken Meeple review! I'm back, yes! If you checked out my vlog on aircon and my sort of recovery, I'm back. It's time to get on with some review content. But if you see me having to take a drink from tea every now and again, I do apologise, but the throat can only last so long. So what am I talking about today? Awkward Guess. Yes, this isn't exactly the most newest game ever, but I acquired it at Essen 2019, and I thought, you know, I heard good things about it. Tom Bassel gave it his seal of excellence. A few people asked me, you know, do I want to review it? You know, can I do a review for it? So I thought, okay, you know what, bonus review for you guys, considering that, you know, Q1 is somewhat devoid of any good game releases for the most part. So what is Awkward Guess and why should you care? Well, the best way to describe this is Cluedo done right. You know, we've already got games like Mysterium and that there, which was kind of like Cluedo mixed with Dixit. This is if you want that pure deduction element of Cluedo, but without that horrible dice system and with a bit more complexity. With this, it's that typical setup of a guy has been murdered and you're detectives trying to figure out who did it, what weapon they used, and what room they started in, that kind of thing.
And exactly how many times did he fall out the window?
It's all a bit of a blur, Detective Inspector.
And you've got the guests that are there, you've got the suspects, and you've got to find out, you know, the combination. It's like, who did it, what was their motive, and what weapon they used. And it's very much like typical Cluedo, where you're piecing together little pieces of a puzzle, effectively. Except, rather than having to move to different rooms and do all this rubbish, you know, like you did in the original Cluedo, here you simply just say, I want to inquire about this dude and this room. And everybody has a hand of cards. With these cards are various evidence, you know, evidence clues or something like that to, you know, help you figure out what's going on. So one card might say that, you know, there was no signs of blood on the crime scene. So, okay, you eliminate certain weapons. Another one might say the housekeeper claims that there was 3 guests in the living room at the time of the murder. And so you mark that down and think, well, hang on, there's 3 there. He thought he was in the 4th, so is he lying? You know, and you start piecing together that kind of thing. But there's no roll and move. There's no like, oh, I got to go to a room to make an inquiry. No, at the start of your turn, you simply just say, this is my inquiry. What other players can do is, with the cards, they're numbered from 1 to 3 in terms of value, like how good the clue is. And the idea is that when you say, I want to inquire about these 2, they look through their hand of cards and go, okay, I want to, you know, I want to find out a bit about them as well, or some other information. I could give them these clues. These won't reveal too much, but I might hold on to this one and just keep that to myself. But here you go. I'm willing to trade 2 worth of clues for you, 2 value of clues. Somebody else then goes, well, I can trade 4. Somebody goes, I can trade 7. You know, they're going to give you a lot of information, but you got to give me a lot of information back. And the player then gets the chance to choose, you know, okay, who am I going to trade with? I'll trade these cards with you and maybe you. There we go. You swap, you figure out what clues you've figured out from the new information you've gathered. Of course, you're giving information away, so you got to be careful. There's a push and pull thing there. And the game just continues in that fashion with this deck of cards until somebody eventually at the end of the round goes, I know where it is. You can either do it via a set of cards, but ideally download the app that comes with that you can get with the game for free. Perfectly fine, just get it off Google Play and that, and you key in the reference for the game. It will have everything in there, and you just simply say, it was this, with this, with this, and it will tell you if you're right or wrong. If you're wrong, keep going. If you're right, then great, game ends, you win. You know, much better than doing it without the app, because otherwise you get player elimination, and that's not particularly good. So that's essentially the crux of the game. But how does this game come up with a decent case? Well, you have this deck of cards. This deck of cards, which is essentially, you know, kind of, in a sense, a brilliant deck system, as they call it. And it enables that the game will never be the same twice. When you pick a case, it tells you which cards to shove into this deck. You create the deck, and then the deck will give you a unique case, with different suspects and different weapons being the main focus. Pretty cool system, but not flawless. Is this definitely the one you should get instead of the original Cluedo? Then, well, let's go into more detail. So duration, this is not the shortest game in the world, I will say. If you think that Cluedo takes a while, this one takes longer than Cluedo. Yeah, the box, I don't think, says specifically how long it takes, or does it? Oh no, 45 to 75 minutes. Well, that's optimistic. 45 minutes if you're playing solo, but this can go up to 1 to 8 players, And if you're playing this with 6 to 8 players, I guarantee you this will not take you 75 minutes. You know, not a hope in hell. You know, this will be like a 2-hour game for you. But with 3 to 5 players, you should be looking at a 90-minute game. 90 minutes, 2 hours at the absolute tops if people can't figure out this mystery, or if someone makes a mistake, or if like people are dragging it down.
Dear God, what is it like in your funny little brains? It must be so boring.
But 90 minutes is kind of a good estimate for how long this game should take, you know, but 45 to 75 on a regular basis with that many players, it's not going to happen. It just will not happen. You know, the more players you have, the longer it will take the end. But one thing I do hate with this is the creation of this brilliant deck. That takes forever. In fact, the 45 to 75 minute thing, I think at least half the time is spent creating that rotten deck. Because you go through the book and it tells you all the numbers. If you do it in the app, it tells you all the numbers, which is fine. But there's 250 plus cards in this game. Something like that. Let's see if I can have a look. Yeah, 250 odd cards in here. You have got to find, I think, 70 of them. And it basically just tells you the numbers. That's it. So you got to go through that entire deck of cards, which is split up into several pieces because you've got different cuppy holds for, like, you know, 50 of them. So 1 to 50, 50 to 100, etc. You've got to go through that, finding individual cards without looking at the clues, and create this deck, and then shuffle it, and then deal the cards out. Oh my God, that takes forever. And then when you pack the game away, yeah, you're going to want to separate those cards out. Otherwise, it will be an absolute nightmare the next time. That's the one major hit on the ease of play, and the duration, like, combined, is just that whole creation of the deck and the teardown is long. It is strained, it's stretched out. No matter how many people you get to help you, it is a stretched out affair.
Well, we're waiting.
Ease of play, this is actually a pretty straightforward game to get into, but it will burn your brain in order to figure out the mystery. This definitely does tax the mind in terms of trying to figure out, oh, hang on, if he's in the garage, then he could have grabbed that weapon, but that ruled out that weapon. But the other weapons available, I need to find out what I can give. Oh, he's asking for information. I could give you this clue. I'm not sure if I want to. I want to hold this back. There's a lot of stuff to consider. But if you're familiar with Cluedo, you should be able to get into this pretty quickly. It's down to how good you are at deduction games. Granted, I suck at them.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
But still, you know, it's down to that. Are you familiar with Cluedo? Then you'll have an easy time getting into this one. There is one aspect of the rules and setup that does grate me a lot with this. The rules themselves are generally well laid out. The reference guide that you've got, this huge screen, yes, there's a misprint on it, which is a little bit annoying, but frankly, you just use the paper pad anyway, so it's not, which is correct, so it's not a big deal. But the reference guide does tell you on the edges, you know, what like certain clues mean, what like the different things you should note down are. And I like that the clue evidence cards tell you how to notate your pad when you find out, so that you can use this like generalized notation system in order to make sense of what it is you're writing down. So tactics and strategy, this is where it shines, really shines, because you know, we like that whole Cluedo thing of trying to figure out, was it Professor Mustard in the hall? Did he use the spanner? What do you know that I don't? Here, it takes that up to 11 with the complexity. You know, I mean, we're not talking sleuth or anything like levels of that kind of complexity, but you know, you've got multiple motives that it could be, you've got multiple weapons, and you know, the weapons are based on what type of weapon they are and what evidence is left at the scene. You've got a map, multiple people, you've got the housekeeper and the maids telling you information that's completely true. You've got the guests telling you information that is mostly true, occasionally they could be lying, and there's about 7 different difficulty levels, and if you want to go from like the mid to high levels, you've got accomplices, where accomplices can like effectively lie for the person. It's like, oh my God, it becomes a brain burner at that point. But even on the easier difficulties, it's still going to take a bit of brain power to figure out. I mean, you will not literally just be able to have it spell out for you. You need to go on hunches at times. You need to think about what other people are doing. You need to be very cautious about what cards you give away, because you might have a clue that's like, this is such a good clue. If they know this, or if he knows this specifically, then it's going to blow their mind. It's going to be too much. I got to hang on to this one, but I need something to trade for information, otherwise I'm getting nothing. And you're thinking about, well, I've traded a lot with you, so you're probably hanging on to stuff I already know. So if I trade with you, that means you're just going to give me rubbish. But I don't want to trade with him either because he's already about to make a guess. So he already has a lot of information. I don't want to give him any more. There's a lot of cool tactics that you've got to, tactical decisions you've got to make. And it's solid. I mean, it keeps you engaged even when you're not directly involved in the whole negotiation process. Although I say negotiation with quotes. I mean, I was hoping there'd be a bit more negotiation in this game. There isn't really. You put down the cards, you say what value there is, people can see whether they're going to be 2s or 3s or 1s. But apart from that, you don't have a lot of leverage to negotiate with people other than reminding them who's got the most information, who gave them a bad card earlier, that kind of thing. Unless you're someone like me who likes to ham up the theme in games, in which case I will trash talk everybody else on the table, try to say no, trade with me, you want to. And people can role play it to the heart's content and inject a little bit of ham and cheese into the mix, and it comes out well. But yeah, you've only got so much in the way of negotiation power when you're playing this. It's really down to that whole deduction element, but it does it well. And because every case is unique, you can't rely on previous cases you've done because the storyline could be completely different, even with just a couple of changes of cards. You might not even know that only 2 cards have changed. It's not like you're going to play the game often enough to be able to remember this stuff. The deck's got, 70 plus cards in it? Yeah, good luck card counting that. It's not going to happen. And you've got a ton of cases in there. They could easily make more. You've got multiple levels of difficulty. You've got the brain-burning niceness that you want. And none of that horrible roll and move. There is not a dice in this game, and thank God for it. Thank God. So, the aesthetics, that's a little bit more hit and miss. They've gone with this kind of whole, not kind of noir, but this whole brown style of card. That everything is brown. It's, kind of like the old style photograph artwork, and then they give you some screens and it fits the theme. I'll give them that, but it doesn't make it the most picturesque game ever. Looking at effectively like a spreadsheet graph paper and then looking at lots of browns and muted, no color basically. That's a little bit of a shame. But other than that, I mean, you've got a pretty decent, well-written rulebook with pictorial examples and everything's laid out nice and clear. You've got a lot of sheets. This is quite a fair few, even if you're going to play this at 6 players all the time, and they're double-sided, so once you've used one side, use the other side. So this is a pad of double-sided paper. You need never get a permanent marker or whatever, a dry erase pen and use the screen, particularly because it's got the misprint on it, although I believe you can buy a sticker from them, or you can download a sticker or something like that in order to paste over it. I can't be bothered. Just use these, because frankly, as much as I like the screen being there, it's not the most effective at keeping your thing handy. I mean, this basically just stands up like so in front of you. Yeah, I guarantee your big spreadsheet paper is not going to fit behind this very well and cover it from the person next to you. So you need to have a little bit of trust in people to not look at your thing and go, let me have a look at your thing, because you're not going to be able to hide it all. But I like the setting that they've gone with. I just maybe would have liked a bit more colour across the board. So I wouldn't say it's a particularly good looker, but then that's not really what this game is going for. You've still got decent, linen finished cards, and they should survive without sleeving. I don't see the need to sleeve them really, and you've got a few standees, a few tokens. There's not a huge amount in this game other than the well laid out spreadsheet, and certainly I do like these pads. I mean, it gives you a nice clear map. You've got plenty of room to walk right on. Tells you what rooms people can enter in and out of. It's got the guests with their motives, the weapons with their it's very comprehensive, but not overwhelming. It may look a bit daunting at first, but when you start getting into it, it does flow nicely. So, immersion of theme, well, it's pretty strong here actually. I mean, this definitely makes you feel like a detective. You are piecing together this puzzle, you're doing what you enjoyed most in Cluedo, and turning it up to 11. It definitely burns your brain. If you're like me and you ham up the negotiation bit a bit, you can role play that to your heart's content and have a bit of a laugh with, dealing with the other detectives and trying to get certain pieces of information. But the theme is pretty strong. It's doing what it sets out to do. Here's a murder, figure it out. And you've got to do a lot of figuring out here. So, can't say much more than that, except that the immersion is pretty strong. When it's not your turn and you're not making an inquiry, even if you're not willing to trade in for information, you're probably still looking at your pad and going, let me see, so he could be there. What are you trading? You've traded with him, so I better make a note of that. But is it a poison? Could it be there? Could it be there? You're going to be thinking about the clues you've got, even if you're not directly involved in the next negotiation. So downtime should be kept to a relative minimal nature here. And then finally, longevity, top notch. I mean, let's face it, you have got a ton of cases in here. In fact, I don't even remember how many they've got in total. Let's have a look. You know, round the back, they've basically got loads of these to say like, oh yeah, here's a different case as well as the answers. But frankly, you could just create a new one. I mean, I don't think you even need to, you know, they've got them in the book, and there's enough in the book to keep you going for a long time with the different difficulties. But if you get the app, then it will basically just conjure up the card combination and you use that. There is endless amount of replayability here with whatever player count you like. Certainly, I would probably say this game works best with more, 3 to 5 players, I think, is the sweet spot. 3 to 5 works quite nicely. I don't see this working as a 2, and, you know, 6 to 8 just gets a bit long. But you've even got the solo mode if you haven't got a group to play with, and the solo mode's pretty decent. Not perfect, but it's decent. You don't get that whole negotiation part, which kind of takes a bit of the fun out of it, but instead you have a certain amount of points of cards, and you basically just have to figure out who did it and whatever based on collecting evidence up to that value. So it gives you, say, 70 points, and you've got to use those 70 points to figure it out. Pretty simple. It gets you that brain burny aspect, gives you some practice with trying to figure out like how the different evidence cards work, but it's nice that it's there. I don't think it's the best solo mode ever that I've played for a deduction game, but it's, you know, it's decent, and it will, of course, increase the longevity if you can't find a group of people to play with. But yeah, this should, for its price, which is not expensive. I mean, what did I buy this for? About 30 something euros? Not expensive at a convention. You know, you should, if you can find a copy of this game, it should be relatively cheap, and it will stay on your shelf for a good long while if you enjoy it. So, you know, top marks there. So my final word on Awkward Guess is that it is Cluedo done right. It's a solid, brain-burning deduction game that doesn't overwhelm new players with fiddly rules, just might grate you a little bit with its long setup and teardown time. If you like deduction games, this is definitely one you should check out. So that's it for me on Awkward Guess. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple review, and for now, regardless of whether you thought it was Professor Mustard with a lead piping in the hall or some other weird combination, it's still only a game. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm gonna take a drink.